story, so I could push back on that, but this is a story that, you see, the way I view the world, there's three forms of power. There's the state, and that has coercive power. And then there's the market has power, and the market has power, control over resources, employment. What you've had in recent years is a complete alliance of the market and the state in order to impose an agenda that never had. The third form of power is our power, relational power. They used to call it, I don't know if anybody remembers it, democracy, you know, where you can do things like that. And you can resist the domination of the rich. That's a bit left-wing, isn't it? Domination of the rich. And the educated and the powerful. So what I see in this world is a coalition between capital and the state to impose an ideology that's never achieved democratic consent. That's the really crucial thing.
Mm-hmm. And Will, what's the answer to this? How can this unholy alliance be dealt with?
Yes, well, certainly I think what we've tried to do at Consumers Research is twofold, but it all falls under the same banner, which is to torture them psychologically until they stop doing it. We have run 7-figure ad campaigns calling out corporations for this types of bad action. In the American right, one of the problems that we have, and I'll probably agree with Morris on this, is that we were far too lenient before enforcing basic laws and our social contract that we have. We like business, obviously I'm sure that everyone in here likes business, but that's the praise that is heaped upon them should only be heaped upon them when they're fulfilling the obligations of serving consumers. And so we've run a number of different campaigns, BlackRockLovesChina.com, I highly recommend everyone visit that, to attack the financial services companies that have done that. The other area I think is very important to push back is a lot of the times these companies are already violating existing laws, at least in the United States. For example, violation of their fiduciary duty, securities fraud, and in America particularly, antitrust regulations were not being enforced against these groups that you talked about, places like Net Zero Asset Managers, Net Zero Bankers Alliance. And so getting groups of like state AGs, as we help to work to do, to sue these banks and these asset managers to enforce the law against them. You don't even need necessarily new legislation, you just need the will to really put the screws to them.
Desiree, what are these key ideologies that are doing the most harm in that side of the world?
Do you know, there are like radical, there's radical ideology out there, but one of the strongest forces is corporate complicity. I've been in the room. I see, and I'm just going to call out big banks. I worked at JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, and they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about outcomes. Everything is about how do we strengthen our market share. No one cares about outcomes. So that's the thing. There is no ideology besides like, let's get one over the public. How do we overcharge the consumer? How do we pass on, like we want a higher barrier to entry. We want more regulation. There is a revolving door between the private sector and the public sector. We need to stop it. We need to call that out. And one of the greatest ways, of course, is to speak out. But we need more insiders, people who have been in the room, who have seen this, to speak up. Too many times, even here, I get like pulled and said, Desiree, I agree with you, but of course, I'm at such and such company. I can't say anything. Like, I don't accept that. We need to speak up. What are we going to give to our children? Let me tell you something. There's a fine line today between autocracy and freedom. And the way that you punch back on autocracy is speaking up.
Morris, a lot of the room is applauding that, but were you just disagreeing with something in that that Desiree just said?
I think it's more than autocracy, I think it's tyranny. I think when you get the consolidation of economic and political power, you get Pharaoh, and that needs to be. But there is a philosophy here, there is an ideological form. The ideological form is diversity is fantastic. Right? That's all they ever say. Diversity is our strength. So, hi, I'm from the left. I believe in solidarity. People building a common life. Diversity is a fact of nature. Solidarity is a sublime act of political grace. But they will do anything to promote this idea of diversity, of actual division, because the more you divide people into different groups, that's the marketing always to different groups. Does anybody here remember COVID? Anybody remember this? It's a dim memory. Yeah. And then what happened? And then BLM came in the middle of that. And then everything was about the enforcement of diversity directives, and all those things. And then the catastrophic climate change is the other thing. So I think it's a very systematic ideology of division and control that involves this coalition. It's called, where I come from, woke capitalism. That's the phrase that we use. And it's strong, yeah. Wow. It's okay, I'm in the Labour Party, I'm not used to applause. It's okay, it makes me nervous.
And you're in danger of sounding right-wing. Will.
Okay, Winston, that's the third time you've gone on about this. So I divide the world into globalists and sovereigntists, and just to let everybody know, I'm a sovereigntist. Yeah.
But understand, one point to make is that I agree the system is now rigged, right? But not by capitalism. It's rigged because of overregulation, right? And that started, we can go back to 1913, we can go back to 1971 and Nixon, delinking the dollar from gold. We can go through, COVID, ESG, Alan Greenspan's, like the Greenspan put, right? Always elite bailouts, right? So, the issue today, why we have the affordability crisis, is not because of capitalism, it's because of, overregulation, central bank printing, cronyism, and lack of courage to speak up. We need to reaffirm free enterprise and capitalism.
Mosh, is that you agreeing?
Yeah, I'm just saying that the corporations embraced this agenda.
Yes.
It wasn't imposed on them. This is the point. Look, markets are all right, but capitalism needs the centralization of assets, corporations, and the corporations pushed for this agenda. So nobody's innocent, guys.
Right. And Will, any final words?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the issues that we have is an elite that's completely detached through luxury beliefs and luxury practices from what they subject the rest of us to. And that elite is sort of cross-national. There's a closer club between London and New York than between New York and Poughkeepsie. And that is part of one of the big problems. In fact, one of the reasons you saw these big asset managers flip is that several sovereign wealth funds, one in Norway and Japan, basically pronounced in, I think, 2016 or 2017, that they would only use asset managers moving forward who would agree to use all of their assets under management to push net zero. Now, that's illegal under US law. You're not supposed to trade off one client's interests for another. And yet, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, many other asset managers were more than willing to sell out the pension funds of Kentucky and Florida and North Carolina and South Carolina, states that would have, had they been paying attention, which they weren't, which is part of the problem, would have not wanted nothing to do with the woke capitalist agenda, but because they weren't paying attention and because these asset managers were more than willing to sell their own clients and their own nations down the river to make an extra buck, that's where we find ourselves. So I agree, the issue is at some level a revolt of our managerial elites who have detached themselves from their own nations even, and they don't have solidarity with the outcomes that we have to be subjected to.
And, we've pushed back on ESG stateside, but make no mistake, they just relabeled it. So the Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance, right? Mark Carney, he gets a lot of dings for being a bad bank governor, right? Terrible prime minister right now, the only country G7 in recession, but he pushed net zero. And do you know what? It was collapsed. We were successful in stopping it. It resurrected, right? And it's still with its mothership here in the UK and in Europe, and we cannot be complacent about it.
Yeah. So what I suggest to you all is a sovereigntist revolt against the lanyard class. I think that's the way ahead.
Yes. Great. On that note, we're going to be watching a film now, and thank you, our great panel.
Charlie Kirk saw clearly that we are passing the next generation an economy that is not working for them. Across the West, commentators now speak of economic nihilism, a you-only-live-once approach to spending, born not from irresponsibility, but from the belief that home ownership and financial stability have slipped permanently out of reach. In cities where housing costs 10 times the median income, why would young people believe the system works for them? This rising nihilism, this widening generational divide, is creating a crisis of faith in the Western tradition, and our declining birth rates are a red flashing warning sign. The future of our civilization depends on us charting a better path, a world where young people believe it is possible to form families, build wealth, and take part in society. This will require a great exchange, a fundamental shift in mindset, a move from short-term politics and short-term gratification to the long view, to legacy, to what we are leaving to the next generation. When we focus on the next generation, everything changes. We look again at our rising debt and easy credit and ask, if we are not willing to pay the price, why should our children? We respond differently to crises, pandemics, financial shocks, not with quick fixes, but with the next generation in mind. We rethink housing, shifting our focus to intergenerational opportunity. We invest differently in our nations, no longer in 4-year cycles, but in 40-year time horizons. We shape our architecture, our culture, our art, with an eye to inheritance, knowing that what we build today is the world our children will grow up in. And we design the technological revolution not as a threat to our children's jobs, but as a responsibility to serve the next generation with the jobs of the future. It is said that the vitality of a civilization can be measured by the character of its young people. But from dwindling demographics to rising pessimism, today all the metrics are pointing in the wrong direction. Every parent knows that their most important responsibility is what we leave for the next generation. At ARC, we believe a different future is possible, one where young people can afford to form families, build wealth, take risks, and believe again in the promise of our civilization. But it begins with a change in how we think, a great exchange, a commitment to build for the next generation. The future of our civilization depends on it.
It's now my absolute pleasure to introduce to you someone who may actually have an opportunity to do something about this. The leader of His Majesty's opposition and leader of the Conservative Party, please welcome to the stage Right Honourable KEMI BADENOCH. Hey, so lovely to see you. Oh, KEMI, thank you so much for joining us on, I know, what's an extraordinarily busy day for you with everything that's happening around government at the moment. We've just listened to that film, and we can see that things are not easy for the next generation coming up and through. And we wanted to talk with you through the streams of the ARC conference, some of the things that you would love to do about the challenges that they are facing and some of the solutions that you see. So if we start with our cultural stories, this morning we heard that fewer and fewer younger people are even wanting to defend our nation. What is it, do you think, that they find that's gone wrong for them? What is it, do you think, that they are struggling with?
Well, I think we should put ourselves in the shoes of the average young person. They're told that they have to go to university. And then when they go to university, they're told all sorts of weird things about what a horrible country they live in and what a terrible history it has. They come out of university with all of this debt, far more than what I had to pay when I took out student loans and tuition fees. I finished a 4-year degree with £14,000. Young people today have loans of £40,000, £50,000, £60,000.
My children will tell you about that.
And then they're told that the planet is going to burn and they've got no future. They can't get a job. Those who can get jobs find the jobs don't pay very well. And even the ones who do get the jobs that pay well can't get a house, can't start a family. Of course they're going to be upset. And I think that we who are older, and I feel sad that I'm now in this category, being now age 46, I cannot call myself a young person anymore.
You're still very young.
Thank you.
Still very young.
But I think we take for granted just how much hope and opportunity there was. When I was 26, so 20 years ago, I wasn't worried about job security. When I finished university in 2003, it was, do I get a job in engineering or do I go into banking? These offers, what's the best one? Do I move out of London or move? That's what I was thinking about. That's not the option that young people have today. So we need to give them some hope. We need to connect with them emotionally, show that we are creating a future for them. But I'm particularly worried about the way they feel about their country. I think young people saying they wouldn't fight for their country is extremely worrying. This is one of the things that we just took for granted. We need to show them that this is a country that is worth fighting for. We need to be more united as we're fragmenting. We are worth fighting for.
I completely agree with you, Kemi, and I think if we look at it from the social fabric perspective, and the fact that now young people are experiencing less resilience than they have done historically, and also have less confidence to go on and start a family, and we're beginning to see declining demographics. What do you think is behind that, and what do you think government can actually do? Because government on social policy can be quite a blunt instrument. And what is cultural and what is government, and can government impact culture?
So I'm glad that you used the word culture. I don't think we talk about culture enough. I've actually tried to change the lexicon so that we don't just talk about British values, which are often not uniquely British, but talk about our culture, which those values underpin, which is uniquely, it is uniquely ours. And I think that government can help with culture, but usually not in the way that government tries to, with all these random schemes and bits of pots of money everywhere. At the moment, government thinks that culture is just, art and music. And a lot of people, when they talk about culture, they think it's just, clothes or food and language. Culture is really norms, behaviors, expectations. It's how you treat other people. It's how you show respect, how you treat women or minorities, how you raise your children, who gets a job in the company. Is it a meritocracy or is it your cousin? That's what culture is. It's all of those behaviors, and we do have a unique culture that we need to defend. When it comes to demographics, I think that the culture is changing. It's not just happening to us in the UK. It's happening across the West and even many non-Western Western countries. I think that we need to champion family. We need to champion having children. I mean, you open the newspaper and there are all these horrible articles about how terrible it is having children, and it's much better to save your money and go on a cruise to the Caribbean instead. I mean, they're these hollow sort of mantras that are replacing things which I believe are really fundamental to human happiness. Having children, having a family, not being isolated, those things do help create resilience. I think people who started families much younger didn't really have time to worry so much about a lot that those of us who have more leisure time do worry about. So championing that culture, the culture of family, of protecting childhood in so many ways. We are letting children down these days. It's something I'm worried about. I think that's what we need to do, and that will encourage marriage. I doubt that changing tax schemes and those sorts of things make much of a difference. The evidence shows that they don't work anyway.
And when you think about our demographics, obviously we have some choices between a stagnating economy, higher levels of migration, or actually having our own children. How would you navigate that kind of triptych of challenges?
So my ambition is to create a high growth, low immigration economy. People in this country were very welcoming of immigration. I mean, I'm a testament to that. But the scale and the pace of immigration in recent years, dare I say even recent decades, has meant that the social fabric has been fraying. I believe that this country is our home. It's not a dormitory for people who want to come here and make some money. It's not a hotel. This is our home. And that really means that we need to re-engineer an economy that delivers that. I think immigration has been used as a shortcut, but it's a Ponzi scheme, because even when you get a new batch of immigrants who come in, the next generation doesn't exactly do what the last generation did. I also worry beyond that about things like artificial intelligence, quantum, robotics. All of these things are challenges, but if we invest in the right places and we make sure that Britain continues to lead where it counts, I think that we can deal with that. But it's also partly culture. It's very easy for governments to open borders rather than tackle very significant problems at home, like cutting welfare. We are spending £1 in every £3 on welfare, 1 in every 7 in defence. During the Cold War, it was the other way around. We are now spending more on welfare than we get in income tax. The rider is heavier than the horse. We need to bring our welfare bill down. It is the real reason why we had a defence secretary resign 2 weeks ago, because he wasn't getting the money that he needed to defend our country. It is extraordinary that a defence secretary would say that the Prime Minister is not keeping us safe and he's not allowed to do the job. So it is urgent, it is an emergency. It's the first thing Andy Burnham needs to deal with, when he can stop taking selfies and focus on the job at hand. But yes, that's what we need to do.
So we have 1,000 young leaders at this conference. And if my own team of young people is anything to go by, they often berate me over how difficult it is to purchase a house. They feel like that social contract has been broken. The work hard, get a job, progress, and then you can buy a house and have a family. They feel like some of these things have been lost. What would you do as leader in order to re-establish that social contract that gives our young people an opportunity?
So I want to promote the conservative, dare I say, the right-wing version of fairness, which is that it is your effort that determines reward, rather than the left-wing version of just redistribution so that everyone can have the same thing, which just means all of us are poorer. For young people, that does mean dealing with the housing crisis. There are 3 reasons why housing is a problem. The first, supply. We don't build enough. The second is demand. We have too many people who have come into the country who have needed houses. We haven't built enough for them. And the third is that the rest of the economy is not performing that well. And that meant that housing became an asset. There was an asset bubble created around housing. Instead of money being put into risk-taking, into companies, into equities, it all went into housing. And that means that the average salary that you need now to buy a home is well above the general average salary. Yeah. We have to fix that. But I would say to young people that I'm sorry that it has come to this. I'm working to fix it. I'm working to bring back hope. I think we took for granted that our country was just a wealthy country. Britain is a rich country, and so we can just do whatever we like. We can send loads of money abroad, we can deindustrialize and bankrupt ourselves with net zero, we can have everyone who claims to be an asylum seeker coming here, people converting to Christianity, get asylum, and then they start going back to the mosque, or people saying that they're gay, and then they get here, they get married and have children. We have allowed our kindness to be exploited, and those of us who are around now have to make sure that we fix it for the next generation, rather than just enjoy ourselves and hope that they figure it out. We have to do this for them. So I say to young people, the hope is coming. I have lots of policies which should deliver for you. There is more to come. The work is not done yet. But we need to make sure that we bring common sense back and start uniting our country and make sure that we deliver an inheritance for the next generation.
You touched on net zero there, Kemi. You have pretty much led the way on turning away from net zero, and the victory in Aberdeen that you've just experienced, congratulations.
Thank you.
Was really
Thank you, Conservatives. You can tell who they are, but
was really off the back of a recommitment to North Sea oil once again. What would you do in government to lower our energy prices and to actually get this country's energy system moving again?
Okay. So it wasn't just the commitment, it was also the consistency. I've been saying this for a long time, and the conviction. When the day that net zero was legislated for, I was one of only 2 MPs who spoke out against it. The other was a Labour MP, Graham Stringer. I could see where it was going when everyone else was just excited and yet again more policy making without a plan. And it was that consistency, people knowing that I really meant it, that I think helped in Aberdeen South. There is a lot that we can do. We do need to repeal the Net Zero by 2050 legislation. The Climate Change Act sounds really lovely. It does not do anything at all about climate change. It was brought in 2008 with Ed Miliband. What it is doing is deindustrializing. We lost 1/3 of our refining capacity in just the last year. We are losing heavy industry. You look at ceramics, aluminium, anything that relies on energy is going away. The Climate Change Act is the act that has a lot of the things, the carbon tax and so on, that are creating those problems. It would abolish the Climate Change Committee. But how does that make life easier for everyone else? We would be able to drill our own oil and gas in the North Sea. There's £25 billion of revenue that's there. Let's get that out. Let's use it. You can, if you want, you can use it to subsidize bills. There are loads of green taxes on our energy bills that people don't see, all sorts of levies and so on. We could take those off. We currently have a policy to scrap VAT on energy bills for 3 years, and we would do that by taking the money from the renewable obligation certificates. For those people who know what that is, it's more Ed Miliband subsidies. But basically, there is a villain in the story of Britain's deindustrialization. His name is Ed Miliband. Please remember that name. He is the villain of the story. He has made our country poorer. He started in 2008, came back 2024 to finish the job. We need to make sure that Andy Burnham understands that this man should not be let anywhere near the levers of power, not in the energy department, not in the treasury. If he can be minister for paperclips, let's do that. But he is making us poorer, and we need to stop him.
And Kemi, if you had one last thing to say to this conference, we are committing to the relaying of the very foundations of our civilization. No small task. It probably feels as Herculean as some of the tasks that you've had to face as well. But what would be the one message that you would want to put out, particularly to our young leaders who are here, that actually raises their eyes and thinks, yes, I have a future?
Right. Well, obviously, as Conservative Party leader, I will want to use my final words to promote my party. But why does conservatism matter? Why does the Conservative Party matter? We are the vehicle for common sense. I believe in institutions. One of the things that has made this country great is that we have looked after our institutions. We've been able to hand something from one generation to the next. The Conservative Party is the only party that really cares about many of those institutions which otherwise would have withered away, whether it's the church or the army or even the monarchy. Institutions need people to believe in them to survive. If young people don't want to join the army, if people don't go to church, and I say this, I define myself as a cultural Christian. If you do, the granddaughter of a reverend, he would be so upset about how few times I actually go to church. If you don't look after these things, they will go away. We care about that. We have been around for 200 years. We are an institution as well. We have a purpose, and that purpose is the vehicle for conservatism, keeping what is great about our country, changing what does need changing, but not at a pace that the country becomes unrecognizable. It is about having common sense, and that's what we are pushing now. That is what the party has changed to under my leadership. I know that previously people saw all sorts of weird and wonderful things that the Conservative Party was doing. We're not doing those things you didn't like anymore. We're going to do the things that you do like, and I hope that whenever an election is called, whether it's next week or next year or the year after, that we will get a second look. Thank you, everybody.
Right Honourable Kemi Badenoch, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Kemi, thank you. Are we walking up somewhere? Thank you, yeah, you got that. What we want to do now is just illustrate how taking some of these economic policies right down into the community level and the impact that it has on very everyday people. And in order to do that, I would like to welcome to the stage Oliver Anthony.
I can use sign language or something probably, if not. Hey, there we go. Now we got something working. How are you guys doing? I'm really surprised they let me back into this place, but I'm honored for your time, and I'll only be a few minutes here, and we'll let the intellectuals get back up on stage. Hey, sound guy, if you can hear me in the back, if you could turn my wireless mic on, that'd be pretty sweet. Just whenever you're ready. Hello? Can you hear me? All right, cool. Now we're here. There was a pioneer woman